This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. There were a lot of hot takes left in the comment section this week, and this is the video where I usually get the opportunity to look at these hot takes and talk about some of these hot takes. First one comes from Edward Bartell, who says this: the fans booing Dillon when he came in on a snap where Shedeur got hurt was maybe the shittiest thing I've seen in football in a few years. To me, it's even worse than cheering when Watson got hurt. Cleveland fans have gotten as toxic as Philly fans, and that breaks my heart. I'm going to be honest with you. We've always been capable of doing the same stuff that Philly fans have been able to. Like, there's a section of the fan base that kind of feels slighted when we're not brought up in these conversations that Philly fans get caught up in, right? Like, it's acting as if the anger that could be felt at Brown Stadium is like new to Cleveland. I don't think that's the case, man. Like, I don't think you can make the argument with this city. And I say that as somebody who is from this city and loves this city and spent my entire adolescence in the city. It's an angry city, dog. Like, we got to be real about what that is. I think that's been one of the biggest things that Browns PR has missed out on. It's like, they don't understand that this is an angry city, man. Like, people just gonna be angry sometimes. It's not even that big of a deal. Sometimes in Cleveland, people be mad at each other. They be angry, but they ain't even that mad. It should be cool. Like, 10 seconds after the angry. It's just like, it's an angry city. It's cold. It's got a lot of the same elements that Philadelphia has, but except for we don't even get the props that Philly gets, right? Whenever people are like, oh yeah, tough places to play, Philadelphia, they don't ever bring up Cleveland. We feel like we deserve them conversations. You know, I can't sit here and act like this toxicity is new to Cleveland when I've seen what this city did to LeBron James when he left, when I have seen what this team and this fan base in that stadium did to referees for Bottlegate, right? Like, the whole reason you can't get a glass bottle at a stadium, that's Cleveland. Like, we gotta be real about Cleveland is a passionate sports city. The people there care. But that goes both ways in Cleveland. It always has gone both ways. And we need to stop selling folks this lie that, like, oh, the Browns going to be good one day and we going to be kumbaya. We going to be mad when they 14-2 too. This is who this city is. Look, a lot of folks who have made a lot of money in this city talking sports. Let's be real. Let's be real. They be selling that anger, dog. Like, this is just anger sells in Cleveland. The sports fan base is usually angry. People were angry when the Cavs were winning championships. People were angry when the Guardians were going to World Series. People be angry when the Browns be winning games. Doesn't mean we don't appreciate it, but yeah, this is a little bit of an angry city. So I think that's just people underestimating Cleveland's ability to be like Philadelphia, right? And to be fair, right, when it comes to the coach of this whole thing, he does not seem fazed by this, and part of that is because Kevin Stefanski is from Philadelphia, and he probably caught on very early that this is the same shit as Philadelphia. It's always been like that. I've always made that argument. You could go back into this city's history. Look, man, it is what it is. I think it's part of the charm in Cleveland that we a little bit angry. I like it. We passionate folk. That's what we are. We passionate. As far as booing Dillon Gabriel, right? So my defense of the city of Cleveland aside, as far as booing Dillon Gabriel, now, there have been some different reports here. My guy Sly came in on that same video and said, hey, when I was at the game, it seemed like they were booing the no call on the Jumbotron or Shedeur getting hit late. They're actually booing Dillon coming into the game. I can't speak for what the fans were actually doing. What I do know is that Dillon Gabriel came in, they booed. Dillon Gabriel threw a pass, they booed again. So at some point, the booing was about Dillon Gabriel, right? Now they didn't exactly cheer when Shador came back into the game. I don't remember hearing any kind of a pop there, but they booed Dillon after the incomplete pass there on like a second down, and it's not usual. Here's what I'll say to that whole situation. I feel bad for Dillon Gabriel. I feel bad for Dillon because I feel like he has become what would it be? The personification. He has become all of the issues that and frustration that people have had with the Cleveland Browns offense specifically over the last couple of years. All of those things, like people aren't just booing Dillon Gabriel because he's that bad at football. Like he's not worse at football than like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who never got this kind of treatment, right? People are booing Dillon Gabriel because they see him as a figurehead of the lack of offensive production this team has been able to put together for a couple of years. So when he's out there, people are not just remembering him, they're remembering Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they're remembering how the offense looked with Deshaun Watson, they're remembering the record, and he's getting the brunt of that verbal abuse. And I think that's unfair for Dillon. I think that the organization kind of put him in a pretty shitty position, if we're being honest here, right? I've praised Andrew Berry in the past. I think Andrew Berry has done a overall good job as a general manager, but I don't think every decision he's made has been one that he's thought out the people stuff well enough. And this is a situation where it's like you kind of made Dillon Gabriel, whether you intended to or not, a sacrificial lamb by drafting Shador Sanders, because the conversation immediately became, how quickly can Shador Sanders surpass Dillon Gabriel? There was never going to be a conversation as long as you drafted Shador about what Dillon Gabriel could be at the quarterback position. The second you drafted Shador, that conversation became irrelevant because people understand that time is scarce in the NFL, especially in a first year for a player. And there's only going to be but so much time. And if you're going to make fans choose who they want to get that time, most fans are going to choose Shador because the media spent the whole offseason talking about how he should be a first-round pick. Now, that didn't end up being the case, but that doesn't change people's perception of him. Right? You get Mel Kiper out there talking about he's a first-round pick, he's a first-round pick, he's a top 3 pick, he's that. Regardless of whether there is actual professional consensus behind Mel Kiper saying that, people are going to think the guy's a first-round pick. How many times have the Browns drafted somebody, right? Like there was somebody, Greedy Williams is a perfect example of this, right? When the Browns drafted Greedy Williams, everybody was doing backflips in Cleveland because we thought we just stole a first-round corner from the draft, and that Greedy Williams was going to be this huge steal. Turned out Greedy Williams wasn't that good, right? And that can happen with draft evaluations where people are going to be like, this is a first-round prospect, this is a second-round prospect, and get really excited about him. That guy falls to the 4th or 5th round, and then you find out there might be a reason for it, right? Perion Winfrey, for me, I thought the guy was a second-round pick when he came out of Oklahoma. I was really excited about Perion Winfrey, right? You remember this stuff. And then Perion Winfrey comes to the league. He turns out he wasn't worth a second-round pick, third-round pick, fourth-round pick, fifth-round pick, sixth-round pick. Damn, it happens. But when you get Shador, that conversation about Dillon Gabriel becomes irrelevant because nobody cares what Dillon Gabriel can be. Because one, because of his lack of physical size, he was always going to be the least interesting quarterback to have a conversation about. This is why there wasn't much pre-draft talk about Dillon, despite him being one of the more quote-unquote polished prospects in the draft class. It's because there's not really much to envision. There's not much creativity you can use there with Dillon Gabriel. He's limited physically. He's limited height-wise. He's only going to be but so good. Shador, there's a lot more imagination between what he could be. And that was always going to capture Browns fans and put Dillon Gabriel in a really shitty spot where he's the guy that nobody wants to see, right? Like that's how this thing ended up being structured. You had Joe Flacco, who people wanted to see again because he had a nice run in 2023 and maybe he could recreate that magic. Once it was clear that that magic wasn't going to be recreated, people wanted to move on, but Dillon Gabriel ended up being this awkward middleman in this whole conversation. And because he's this awkward middleman, he kind of gets treated pretty badly by the fan base, and treated pretty badly by the fans in the stadium. And that's unfortunate, right? Like, he really didn't do anything to anybody. Anytime I say this, there's always like some guy who's like, he did do something. The offense didn't score points with him out there. It's like, that's not something that we treat people like shit over, though. Like, that's not an acceptable reason in society to be a fucking asshole to somebody, right? Like, that's a reason to be like down on somebody's career, but to be an asshole, that's not a good enough reason. You act like he actually did something, especially when we're talking about Deshaun Watson, like getting the only quarterback that we've seen in recent memory getting a similar treatment to Dillon Gabriel. And like, Deshaun Watson wasn't booed because people didn't think that his football was good. Like, Deshaun Watson was booed primarily because he was Deshaun Watson and everything that comes with him being Deshaun Watson. Right? Like, that's what the booing was largely about. People were tired of dealing with that and all of the allegations that you had to sort through, and whether he was going to get suspended or whether another case was going to pop up, and the implications of rooting for a team that has somebody centered on the franchise with those kind of allegations, right? Like, that I can understand why people would boo. Dillon Gabriel was just not that good at football. Like, we was booing him at the same rate that Deshaun was. And the reason is because you're still kind of booing Deshaun by booing Dillon Gabriel, because what you're really booing, or at least what I think people are really booing, is their frustration with the offense and the lack of change over what these solutions look like on offense is really what I think people are spiritually trying to boo, whether they're conscious of it or not. But yeah, it's a tough spot, and they put Dillon in a shitty position, right? Like, definitely put him in a shitty position, and they should really think about that going forward. We're going to talk about more hot takes, but I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required, and also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Next hot takes from Tim, who says, I don't think the Browns drafted Gabriel or Shador with the idea of them being long-term answers. I don't think anyone has played well enough to make the Browns deviate from their plan. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say I think the Browns drafted Dillon Gabriel and Shador with the hopes that maybe they would like stumble upon something magical there, but they were drafting them with the expectation that they wouldn't draft a quarterback the year after, if you understand what I'm saying. And yeah, I don't think we've seen enough from any of these quarterbacks to where you would change your mind. And I'm going to be honest with you, there's just not a lot that these quarterbacks could do to make a team change their mind, right? Like, if you value somebody as an organization, like you did with Dillon Gabriel as a 3rd-round pick, and you value somebody like they did with Shador as a 5th-round pick, you could maybe argue a 4th-round pick because they traded up to get him 2 6th-round picks. So let's just say you value both these quarterbacks at a 3rd and 4th-round valuation, right? If you value a quarterback in the 1st round of next year's draft and you have the chance to get him, well, that's gonna knock out what you have in those guys, right? You didn't think that they had the upside to be what the 1st-round guy could be, so why would you not draft the 1st-round guy because you drafted those two? They're just not going to operate like that. So yeah, it was an uphill battle to start, and honestly, I wonder if anything could have even been done once the Browns' record started to go the way that it did. I think the writing was on the wall for what the Browns are likely to do in the offseason, right? Because as I said at the beginning of the year, right, and people push back on this then, they'll push back on it now, but it's going to end up being true. The Browns' willingness to draft a quarterback has much less to do with what's on the roster and much more to do with what they think of the class, what they think of the prospects, and what position they're in to draft the quarterback. If the Browns think highly of these prospects and they're in position to draft the quarterback, it didn't matter what Shador did this year. It didn't matter what Dillon Gabriel did this year. They were always going to draft that quarterback. teams have had Aaron Rodgers on their roster and have had an opportunity to draft the quarterback that they thought was really good and then drafted him, right? That's how Jordan Love ends up on the Green Bay Packers. You know, the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins to a big-ass contract, but then Michael Penix was available in the first round, and they didn't expect that, and that was a guy that they had a high grade on, and then they drafted Michael Penix. If you think a guy has first-round potential, franchise quarterback potential, and you have the opportunity to draft them, that team's going to draft them. It doesn't matter what's going on the roster. It doesn't matter what some fifth-round pick did. It doesn't matter what some third-round pick did. If they thought that those quarterbacks had that kind of potential, they would have took them earlier in the draft. Dillon Gabriel would have been first-round pick by the Browns, right? But that's not the case. So, yeah, I'd agree with you. Scott says this. We will draft another QB and give him 6 games, bust out the pitchfork. Does any other franchise do this? Take a top talent in the draft like Mendoza, get the guy 4 years, and then evaluate if he's franchise or not. I would agree with that. You know, we'll get to the comment that replied to him in a second. I would agree with that, right? It'd take a guy at the top of the draft, and then the next 4 years are about that guy. That's what I want, more than likely, for this team to commit to. It's just, okay, we've had a cycle. We've done this stuff over and over again. Let's just take a guy at the top of the draft and commit the next 4 years to getting the most out that guy. You know, Kia Adams with a reply here. I feel bad for Dillon. Also feel bad for the QB we draft because we certainly will draft one. And G. Bush will rip them all off season. Oh, man, I think y'all got to give G. Bush a little bit more credit than y'all give him. I know that's not going to be popular to say, but, you know, G. Bush is more flexible to reality than I think people give him credit for, right? Like, he's not going to just be stubborn. Like, if the wind is blowing a direction or if he sees why a quarterback is a first-round prospect, then I think he will understand and not, you know, just rip him just to rip him, right? He's not a cartoon character. Sometimes we get so caught up, we just be talking about people like he a cartoon character, but to each his own on that one. But I don't think that the same dynamic that happened with Dillon Gabriel is really going to happen with a first round pick. And here's why. When Dillon Gabriel went ahead of Shedeur Sanders, that was not something that people expected in the first place. So when the Browns drafted Shedeur and put him behind Dillon Gabriel, the expectation from people who know about how football works was that Shedeur was going to leapfrog Dillon Gabriel. That dynamic was in the favor of Shedeur from the beginning, right? It's why the criticism of Dillon Gabriel wasn't just coming from Shedeur fans. It was coming from just regular analysts. If the Browns draft a quarterback in the first round, that dynamic then goes in favor of the first round pick. Because, yeah, there are going to be some Shedeur diehards that still want Shedeur to play over the first round pick of the draft. But the reality is once that first pick of the draft takes over, if the Shedeur fans are complaining about that, most people are going to look at them and go, well, that's just what happens, right? Like there's no plausible out for this being a conspiracy if that's the case, because it's like a first round pick being played over a fifth round pick. Buddy, that's happened. You could be really good and be a second round pick, and then they take somebody in the first round and you get played out because of that, right? That's what happened with Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees. So precedent wasn't really on Dillon Gabriel's side. Like it was shocking that he got taken before Shedeur. And then when he got put ahead of him on the depth chart, I mean, obviously because he's a third round pick and Shedeur's a fifth round pick, that's going to happen. But that fueled the outrage and people are like, Dillon Gabriel can't possibly be better than Shedeur Sanders was the argument that a lot of people in the mainstream were like, yeah, that makes sense. But if you make that same argument with, hey, this guy that the team drafted in the top 5 of the first round, there was a consensus QB 1 or 2 in this year's class, can't possibly be better than Shedeur, there's going to be a lot more pushback on that idea. So, no, I don't think that that's going to be an issue I think there are going to be some folks that are mad, but there's still some folks that are upset that Deshaun Watson's not really getting to run anymore. We don't really worry about them, right? It's not going to be the norm because naturally the fan base is going to want to get behind the guy who was drafted number in the first round, right? If Shador goes out there and plays while that guy is getting his development time on the bench at the beginning of the season, and Shador plays well, then you just keep playing Shador, and then you move him in the offseason, and then maybe that puts that guy in a tough position later. But if everything's going well behind the scenes with the guy that you're developing, Shador doesn't play well, then obviously that story writes itself. There's just a lot of different ways that it could play out. And I wouldn't assume the dynamic that took place with Dillon and Shador would happen again with somebody else in Shador if you draft them in the first round, just because Dillon Gabriel is a much different thing to qualify being better than Shador than a first round pick, right? Like that's much different. I think that's a completely different situation. Guru says this is where I push back on this is about the Shador Sanders film breakdown. This is where I push back on the whole excuse that he didn't have protection. In this game, the O-line actually played solid. He had too much time in the pocket. Here's what I'll say. The issue when people present these reasons for why Shador wasn't successful in the game when it happens, the issue isn't that they aren't telling the truth, that, hey, look, the pocket wasn't great for Shador. It's that they're overstating the impact of a lot of these things, right? So, when he went out there, looked bad versus Baltimore, the first thing people went to was reps. He looked bad because of the reps. He didn't get the reps. The Browns are malpractice because he didn't get the reps. All this stuff. Were the reps important? Sure. Would the reps would have made him look a little bit better in the game? Sure. Would the reps have been a transformative thing for him? No, it wouldn't have been a transformative thing for him in that game because the reps weren't the only reason why he was looking bad, right? In the second game, well, at the end of the game, they were like, oh, well, when he got protection, he was able to throw downfield. It was really good. But in this game, he gets protection. He's not throwing downfield well. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's this or that. The reality is that there are going to be reasons you aren't successful. There are going to be reasons that you are successful. And the reasons you are successful have to outweigh the reasons you aren't, right? And you can't overstate every single thing that went wrong around him and be like, that's why he played bad. It's usually a more complicated story than that. There could be a thing that goes wrong here or there, but, even if you don't have great protection, you're expected to be able to do something. Right. And if you have great protection and you can't throw downfield because it's windy, well, then you're also expected to do something at that position. So, it's just, I feel like people, they get to these excuses, and I don't want to call them excuses, the reasons they think that he played bad, and they just overstate how much impact they should have on there. Instead of just trying to evaluate fairly what he is doing and what he isn't doing. Because I don't think that requires you to think that Shador is trash or something like that. Like, I think you can, again, be in a world where you're saying to yourself, hey, I think Shador could be good, but he needs to fix this stuff. I think it's a perfectly reasonable place to be at. But when you're saying that, no, he doesn't have anything to fix, it's the team around him that needs to fix everything. It's like, well, then people are going to point out the flaws even more. It's a very long-winded way to get there. I apologize for how long it took for me to get this answer out, but that's what I think. But thank you for that question. Well, thank you for that hot take. My bad. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.